All right, let's jump right in. We are going to walk through a really startling scenario. Think of it as a thought experiment, looking back from the very near future at a massive economic crisis. Now, this isn't a crystal ball, but it's a fascinating look at what could happen when AI gets really, really good. So, to understand this, we're going to put ourselves in the shoes of an analyst writing in June of 2028. They're basically doing a post-mortem on a crisis that has just ripped through the economy. This memo is our roadmap for figuring out how everything went so wrong, so unbelievably fast. And right out of the gate, the memo hits you with a punch. In this future, the unemployment rate has skyrocketed to 10.2%. You have to understand, this isn't some slow-moving trend. This is a full-on emergency, an economic shock that's caught everyone completely off guard. And it wasn't just a jobs crisis. Look at the markets. After hitting a peak of around 8,000 in late 2026, the S&P 500 has absolutely cratered, down 38%. So we're talking about a systemic economic meltdown. The huge question on everyone's mind is, how on earth did we get here? And here's the kicker. The memo argues that this whole catastrophe wasn't triggered by some big irrational panic. No, it all started with thousands of companies, all making what seemed like a perfectly logical, sensible business decision. So let's rewind the clock a bit and see how that first domino fell. The crazy part is, it all started in the tech industry itself. The very people building AI became its first major casualty. And it all came down to a huge leap forward in something called agentic AI coding. See, by late 2025, AI agents got so good at writing software that pretty much any decent developer could build their own versions of expensive software as a service products. So all of a sudden, every CIO looking at these massive renewal contracts started asking this one very, very dangerous question. Now, this is where you start to see this really nasty feedback loop form. Think about a company like ServiceNow. They're being threatened by AI, so their only move to survive is to lay off their own people to free up cash to invest in more AI. The very companies being threatened become the most aggressive adopters. But this thing did not stay contained in the software world for long. It spread. And the next target? Basically any business that was built on being a middleman, or as this memo calls it, intermediation. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, trillions of dollars of our economy were built on what you could call human friction. The fact that we get tired, we stick with brands we know, we just don't have the time to check every single price for every single thing. These businesses were basically monetizing our limitations. They were friction with a friendly face. And boom, you just see this whole list of industries get hammered. Once you have AI agents working for you 24/7, tirelessly optimizing every single one of your decisions, reshopping your car insurance every year, finding the absolute cheapest flight, these old business models just start to fall apart. This was the moment that people realized the problem wasn't just about products anymore. It was about the plumbing of the economy. When these AI agents started figuring out how to route payments around those 2-3% credit card fees, it wasn't just a threat to a business model. It was a threat to the fundamental infrastructure of how we all buy things. So all of this starts feeding into the central engine of the crisis, what the memo dubs the intelligence displacement spiral. And let me tell you, it's a vicious one. And here's why that spiral spun so violently. In the US, the top 20% of earners are responsible for a whopping 65% of all consumer spending. And who are those people? They're the white-collar professionals, the managers, the analysts, the very people whose jobs were now being automated away by AI. And here's that brutal loop in action. AI gets better, so companies lay off expensive workers. But those are the big spenders, so their spending dries up. And what do companies do when demand falls? They cut more costs, which means buying more AI. And you just go right back to step one. Unlike a normal recession, there was no natural end to this cycle. And this isn't just theory, right? This is what it looks like for a real person. These highly paid professionals didn't just vanish. They took whatever jobs they could find, flooding the service economy. The result? It wasn't just job losses anymore. It was economy-wide wage compression. Everyone's wages started getting pushed down. For a while, Wall Street kind of shrugged this off. They thought, okay, this is just a tech problem, it's contained. But they were wrong. The fire burning in the real economy was about to jump the fence and set the entire financial system ablaze. The first real tremors were felt right here, in the massive private credit market. Why? Because it was loaded with debt from all those software-as-a-service companies whose guaranteed recurring revenue suddenly wasn't so recurring anymore, thanks to AI. And the default of Zendesk? Well, that was the smoking gun. It was a record-breaking default, and it sent a shockwave through the credit markets. It forced every single lender to ask a terrifying question. Whose business model is AI going to break next? But you know what? Private credit, as big as it is, was just the appetizer. The real contagion, the big one, was about to hit a market that was orders of magnitude bigger and far, far more important to the entire global financial system. And there it is. $13 trillion. The entire U.S. mortgage market was built on one single bedrock assumption, that prime, high-earning white-collar professionals have stable, predictable jobs. And that assumption was now officially broken. This became the whispered, once unthinkable question that underwriters were now forced to ask themselves. I mean, think about that. Prime mortgages were supposed to be the safest asset on the planet, but the world had changed underneath them. The structural earning power of the very best borrowers was now fundamentally in doubt. And this all brings us to the memo's ultimate mind-bending conclusion. This wasn't just another financial crisis. This was a fundamental repricing of the economic value of human intelligence itself. You have to understand, for all of modern economic history, human intelligence was the scarce resource. That's what you paid a premium for. This crisis models a world where that's just not true anymore. Suddenly, machine intelligence is abundant. It's cheap, like a utility you plug into the wall. And the entire economic framework we've built for centuries just stops working. And just as the scenario reaches its darkest point, the memo yanks us back to today. We aren't in 2028. This hasn't happened yet. Those feedback loops, as dangerous as they are, haven't taken hold. As the source says, the canary in the coal mine is still alive. And this is the question we're left with, isn't it? The old economic playbooks, the old solutions, they just don't fit a world where our most productive asset, intelligence, actually creates fewer jobs, not more. We desperately need new frameworks for this new reality. The only question is, can we build them in time?